There's a specific kind of pain that comes from watching a movie you love get remade badly. It's not just disappointment, it's more personal than that. Like someone took something that mattered to you and used it as a template to make something that matters to no one. And look, remakes have always existed. Sometimes they're great. The Thing, The Fly, Cronenberg's whole filmography. But sci-fi seems to get hit the worst, and I think I know why. Most great sci-fi films are actually about something. The monsters, the spaceships, the future dystopia, they're vehicles for an idea. Take the idea out and replace it with a bigger effects budget, and you're not making a remake. You're making a Halloween costume of a movie. That's what this list is. 10 times Hollywood looked at a classic and thought, we can do that, and then absolutely could not. A couple of these lost hundreds of millions of dollars. One of them ended careers. And number 3 has its own documentary, which honestly turned out better than the actual film. We'll get there. Number 10, War of the Worlds, 2025. We're starting with the freshest disaster on the list, and honestly, it might be the most baffling one. H.G. Wells wrote The War of the Worlds in 1898. It's one of the most important science fiction novels ever created. It's been adapted into radio plays that caused actual mass panic, blockbuster films, television series, and video games. So, when a new adaptation was announced for 2025, it seemed like a reasonable bet. After all, the source material is practically bulletproof. Alien tripods descend on humanity, civilization crumbles, and the invaders are ultimately undone, not by human ingenuity, but by the smallest organisms on the planet. It's a story that writes itself, and somehow, they still managed to mess it up in a way nobody saw coming. The 2025 version made one creative decision that doomed it from the start. Instead of showing us the invasion through the eyes of characters on the ground, like every other adaptation has done, this version told the entire story through the screen life format. That means the whole alien invasion, one of the most epic premises in all of fiction, was confined to computer monitors, phone cameras, and video calls. Picture the most terrifying extraterrestrial attack in literary history, and now imagine watching it exclusively through someone's laptop screen. That's what audiences got. But the format wasn't even the worst part. Critics tore into the film for what they described as some of the most shameless product placement in modern movie history. We're talking about scenes where brand logos were more prominent than the alien threat. There were moments where characters literally referenced specific products mid-invasion, as if the apocalypse was sponsored. The editing was chaotic, the performances felt stiff and constrained by the format, and the messaging that made Wells's novel resonate for over a century was completely diluted. Every previous adaptation understood that the power of the War of the Worlds lies in making the audience feel small, helpless, and insignificant against an overwhelming force. This version made them feel like they were watching a bad Zoom call with occasional explosions in the background. It landed as one of the worst reviewed films of 2025 across the board, with critics and audiences united in their disappointment. Number 9, The Stepford Wives, 2004. In theory, this should have been one of the best films of 2004. The cast alone: Nicole Kidman, Glenn Close, Bette Midler, Christopher Walken, Matthew Broderick, Faith Hill. That's a cast you assemble for an awards contender, not a movie that quietly disappears from theaters. The 1975 original is genuinely unsettling. Independent women in a Connecticut suburb are secretly being replaced by obedient robot duplicates built to fulfill male domestic fantasies. The final image, these blank-eyed women drifting through a supermarket in white dresses, is one of the great horror endings. The word Stepford literally entered the English language. That's the kind of cultural impact you're dealing with. So naturally, the remake turned it into a comedy. Frank Oz, whose instincts leaned toward lighter material, shifted the tone so dramatically that every ounce of menace drained out. Glenn Close, who should have been terrifying, was directed to play for laughs. What was chilling became sitcom adjacent, and the production couldn't even agree on what kind of movie it was trying to be. Reports from the set described a film in constant identity crisis. Horror movie one week, dark satire the next, family comedy the week after that. Test screenings bombed, reshoots followed, and the new ending introduced plot holes so large the film literally contradicts itself in ways you can't ignore once you notice them. The original had real teeth. It was uncomfortable and deliberate about the ways society pressures women to conform, about how the male fantasy of the perfect wife requires erasing who she actually is. The remake turned those ideas into gentle jokes that landed with roughly the impact of a throw pillow. The film's own cast members deserved much better, and so did audiences. Number 8, The Invasion, 2007. This one hurts because the track record was so good before it. Invasion of the Body Snatchers is one of those rare concepts that works in literally any era. The 1956 original captured Cold War paranoia. The 1978 remake, Donald Sutherland screaming, pointing at you, one of the great horror images, is widely considered one of the best remakes ever made. Even the 1993 version had its fans. 3 films in, the franchise was batting 1,000. 2007 should have been a layup. Post 9/11 America was swimming in paranoia and distrust. The premise, your neighbors aren't who you think they are, had never felt more relevant. Instead, we got a film that fundamentally misunderstood what makes the concept scary. Nicole Kidman and Daniel Craig starred, which sounds great until you realize that having 2 of the most glamorous, charismatic movie stars on Earth play ordinary people in danger doesn't really work. You never fully believe they're in trouble. They carry this aura of invincibility that's great for a Bond film and actively harmful here. Then there's what they did to the pods. Gone. No more alien pods quietly growing body-shaped husks in your basement. Instead, a virus. An alien spore that spreads like a cold and only takes over while you're asleep. The solution? Stay awake. That's it. Don't nap. What was existential dread became a caffeine commercial. The Wachowskis were brought in to basically reshoot the entire third act after disastrous test screenings, and the result is a film that feels like 2 different movies stapled together. Slow paranoia thriller for an hour, then suddenly a car chase action movie. You can feel where the stitching is. The franchise has been dormant ever since. 4 films in, 1 genuinely terrible swing, and that's where it ended. Number 7. The Day the Earth Stood Still, 2008. The 1951 original is one of the pillars of the genre. An alien named Klaatu lands in Washington to deliver humanity an ultimatum. Stop your violent ways, or we'll stop you permanently. Made in the shadow of nuclear annihilation, it hit differently than almost anything else of its era. And Gort, the iconic robot, became one of the great movie images. A 2008 remake had a real argument for existing. Climate change was the new nuclear threat. The message could update. And Keanu Reeves as Klaatu? Actually a smart call. He has this natural stillness, something almost inhuman about his screen presence. It could have worked. It didn't. The director, Scott Derrickson, to his genuine credit, has been very honest about what went wrong. He's called it a horrific experience and admitted the film didn't turn out well. The Writers Guild strike hit during production. 100 days with no writers on a script that already needed work. That's catastrophic for any film, but especially one that depends on its ideas landing. The environmental message replaced the nuclear one, which was fine in theory. In execution, it was relentlessly preachy. Klaatu wasn't mysterious. He was a lecture in a suit. The original respected its audience enough to let them draw their own conclusions. This one didn't. And then there's the kid. Jaden Smith, playing the stepson, became the single most criticized element in nearly every review. The film needed you to care about his relationship with his mother and with Klaatu. Audiences instead found themselves actively rooting against him. When the emotional core of your film repels people, there's no amount of visual effects that can compensate. The film made money, about $233 million worldwide, but it damaged careers in ways that lasted years. Derrickson didn't direct another feature until Sinister in 2012. Reeves' career didn't fully recover until John Wick arrived 6 years later. Number 6. I Am Legend, 2007. Richard Matheson's 1954 novel basically invented the modern zombie apocalypse. George Romero has openly said it inspired Night of the Living Dead. The ending is one of the great twists in horror fiction, a gut punch that redefines everything you just read. 2 previous adaptations, Vincent Price in 1964 and Charlton Heston in 1971, had landed without fully capturing what makes the book special. A third attempt with Will Smith and modern technology felt like the definitive version was finally within reach. And parts of it genuinely are. Smith carrying the entire first act of this film on his own, talking to mannequins, maintaining a fragile daily routine as the last functioning human in New York City, is remarkable work. The production actually shut down sections of Manhattan to film those scenes, and Times Square, empty and overgrown, is an image that stayed with people. Smith's performance deserved a better film around it. The CGI infected killed it. The Darkseekers moved like video game characters. Rubbery, weightless, not scary. In a film that absolutely depends on you being terrified of these creatures, breaking that illusion every time they appear is fatal. Practical effects, or at minimum a blend, would have changed everything. But the real wound was the ending. Matheson's novel ends with Neville realizing the infected have built a functioning society. They have families. They are afraid of him. In this new world, Neville is the monster, the legend they warn their children about. It's devastating, and it gives the title its entire meaning. The filmmakers shot that ending. Test audiences didn't like it. They wanted Will Smith to go out as a hero, so the studio caved and replaced it with a generic sacrifice. The alternate ending leaked online years later. The reaction was overwhelming and unanimous. That was the movie people wanted to see. The one they actually released stripped the soul right out of it.
Number 5. Flatliners, 2017. Some remakes fail because they were too ambitious. Some fail because they were too cautious. Flatliners 2017 is a cautious failure, which is almost harder to forgive. The 1990 original, Joel Schumacher, Julia Roberts, Kiefer Sutherland, Kevin Bacon, wasn't a perfect movie. Most people would admit that. But it had an electric premise. Medical students stopping their own hearts to see what lies beyond death, and then discovering that death sends your worst guilt back to haunt you. It stuck with you. It asked real questions. The 2017 remake starred Elliot Page, Diego Luna, and Nina Dobrev, and it was marketed with Kiefer Sutherland appearing in trailers in a way that strongly implied the film was a sequel, a continuation of the original story, maybe with Sutherland mentoring a new generation. That's what people expected when they walked in. Instead, they got a straight remake with Sutherland in a glorified cameo with no meaningful connection to the original. The bait and switch poisoned it before it had a chance. Not that it would have mattered much. The film follows the 1990 version's beats with mechanical precision, without adding a single new idea. Same structure, thinner characters, lower stakes. The original's characters had distinctive personalities, and their guilt felt earned. Real, specific shame. The remake's dark secrets involve things like sending embarrassing photos. It's the same movie at a fraction of the intensity. The critical response was historic. 4% on Rotten Tomatoes. 4. The original, which critics weren't exactly raving about either, sits at 49%. The remake was literally 12 times worse by that measure. The site's own consensus called it dead on arrival, which really is the only phrase for it. Number 4. Godzilla, 1998. There are bad remakes, and then there are remakes so bad that the studio that invented the original character makes another movie just to kill the version you created and have audiences cheer. That is what happened here. TriStar bought the rights for an American Godzilla trilogy in 1992. This was a big deal. Tim Burton, James Cameron, Sam Raimi, Joe Dante, all were considered as directors at various points. Jan de Bont eventually developed a script with Godzilla battling an alien creature. Budget crept toward $150 million, and the studio got cold feet and wanted it cheaper. So they hired Roland Emmerich, who, by his own admission, didn't really like Godzilla, hadn't seen most of the Japanese films, didn't particularly understand why the character mattered. His collaborator, Dean Devlin, described their initial reaction to the concept as thinking it was a dopey idea. These are the two men Hollywood chose to steward a property that had been culturally significant in Japan for over 40 years. They redesigned Godzilla as a giant iguana. Fans coined the nickname Gino, Godzilla in name only. The atomic breath, maybe the character's single most iconic feature, was replaced with what was essentially a strong exhale that happened to ignite nearby gas. When this leaked before release, the backlash was so severe that last-minute tweaks were made, but it was too late. The marketing was massive. Taco Bell, toy lines, billboards everywhere. Size does matter as a tagline. The Wall Street Journal estimated it needed $240 million domestically to be considered successful. It didn't come close. Second weekend attendance dropped more than 60%. Sequels were canceled. The toys were pulled. And then Toho made Godzilla: Final Wars in 2004 and put the American design in it specifically so the real Godzilla could destroy it in seconds. They used their own franchise to make a statement about a film they were offended by. The fans cheered.
That really happened.
Number 3. The Island of Dr. Moreau, 1996. The big one.
Right, okay, so H.G. Wells published The Island of Dr. Moreau in 1896. A scientist on a remote island transforms animals into human-animal hybrids through surgery. It's a nightmare, and a brilliant one. By the mid-90s, New Line Cinema finally had the budget and the technology to make a definitive version. They had Marlon Brando, one of the greatest actors in cinema history, as Moreau. They had Val Kilmer, fresh off Heat and Batman Forever. They had Stan Winston designing the creatures. And they had Richard Stanley, a passionate cult filmmaker who had spent years fighting to get this project made and had written the screenplay himself. It should have been extraordinary. I don't even know where to start. Bruce Willis was originally cast as the lead. Then Willis left, reportedly related to his separation from Demi Moore. Kilmer got shuffled into Willis's bigger role, but then Kilmer demanded a 40% reduction in his shooting days for reasons nobody has ever fully explained. This pushed Kilmer into the smaller role of Montgomery, which meant James Woods, who'd been cast as Montgomery, was suddenly out. And none of this had involved a single day of actual filming yet. Stanley made it 3 days before New Line fired him. The studio said he was overwhelmed. Stanley said he'd been undermined from the start. Either way, the man who wrote the script and had fought for years to make this film was removed from his own production. What he did next is, genuinely, one of the stranger stories in Hollywood history. According to multiple accounts, confirmed in the 2014 documentary Lost Soul, Stanley snuck back onto the set in prosthetic makeup, disguised as one of the creature extras. He put on the animal hybrid suit and watched the rest of the production from inside it. The writer of the film, standing in the background, unrecognized. Veteran director John Frankenheimer came in to salvage things. It didn't go well. Kilmer's behavior on set became notorious, taunting crew members, clashing with everyone, reportedly burning a cameraman while lighting a cigarette. Frankenheimer later reworked the old Will Rogers quote, "I never met a man I didn't like," specifically about Kilmer. Then there was Brando. Shortly before production, his daughter died by suicide. The tragedy devastated him, and he retreated to his private island. The whole production sat in limbo, not knowing if he'd show up. When he did arrive, he refused to learn his lines. They had to be fed to him through an earpiece in real time while he improvised. Among his suggestions, that Moreau should be revealed as a Dolphin Man hybrid. Marlon Brando, wanting to play a dolphin, in an H.G. Wells adaptation. Fairuza Balk hit her breaking point after a confrontation with studio executives and fled. Had a production assistant drive her from Cairns to Sydney in a rented limousine. That's roughly 2,500 kilometers. Her agent reportedly warned her the studio would destroy her career if she broke contract, and she came back. The film opened in August 1996 to $49 million worldwide against a $40 million budget, which looks break-even until you factor in marketing. Critics destroyed it. Kilmer's reputation as difficult became so firmly established by this production that major studios became reluctant to hire him. Stanley didn't direct another feature for over 15 years. The documentary made to explain what happened is genuinely entertaining, which is more than you can say for the film. Number 2, Total Recall, 2012. Paul Verhoeven's 1990 Total Recall is a film that, on paper, should not work, and somehow absolutely does. Arnold Schwarzenegger playing a man questioning whether his entire life is a dream implanted by a memory company. It's violent, funny, strange, and built around a central ambiguity the audience is still debating. Did any of this actually happen? Verhoeven deliberately left it open, and that openness is a large part of what makes the film last. The Martian setting was vivid and weird. The humor was dark and self-aware. It balanced extreme gore with sharp satire and genuine philosophical questions, and managed to be one of the most entertaining action films ever made. 22 years later, Sony said, "What if we removed everything that made it work?" Mars was gone entirely. The alien setting, the mutant colony, the atmosphere that made every outdoor scene feel dangerous and strange, eliminated. The story relocated to a futuristic Earth divided into 2 zones connected by a tunnel through the planet's core. Visually clean, completely devoid of personality. Colin Farrell replaced Schwarzenegger. Farrell is genuinely talented and has proven it many times, but the role required what only Schwarzenegger could provide. That specific combination of imposing physicality, deadpan delivery, and the ability to be both confused and brutal in the same scene. Farrell played it straight and serious, and the result felt generic where the original felt singular. The humor was stripped. The R rating dropped to PG-13. The satire aimed at corporate greed and media manipulation, which made the original feel ahead of its time, was softened into background noise. And most critically, the central ambiguity was resolved too early. The film tips its hand before the audience has fully invested. What was a layered psychological thriller became a chase movie with expensive set pieces. Schwarzenegger himself was blunt about the remake, calling the idea of remaking the film something no one should have attempted. Verhoeven watched it and described his reaction in 2 words that left no room for interpretation. The box office looked okay, $198 million, until you factor in the $125 million production budget plus marketing. Sony reported it as a financial loss. Wiseman didn't direct another feature for nearly a decade.
Number 1. RoboCop, 2014. Paul Verhoeven's 1987 RoboCop might be the most perfectly constructed sci-fi satire ever made. A cop gets blown apart by criminals and rebuilt as a cyborg law enforcer by a corrupt corporation. On the surface, it's an action film. Underneath, it's a furious, darkly funny dismantling of everything rotten about Reagan-era America. Corporate dehumanization, privatized public services, media that treats violence as entertainment. The extreme violence wasn't gratuitous, it was the point. Each brutal scene illustrated exactly how far corporate interests will go when human beings become line items on a spreadsheet. The R rating wasn't incidental, it was load-bearing. So when MGM announced a remake, the right director mattered enormously. And they actually got him. José Padilha, the Brazilian filmmaker behind the 2 Elite Squad films, was perfect. Those movies are gritty, politically furious examinations of police corruption. They carry exactly the energy the original RoboCop carries. On paper, this was a dream match. What happened next is one of Hollywood's most depressing case studies in what studios do to directors they hire. Fernando Meirelles, the director of City of God, revealed that Padilha had called him during production, describing the experience as the worst of his life. According to Meirelles, roughly 90% of Padilha's ideas were rejected by the studio. Every instinct the director brought, the instincts that made him the right person for the job, was overruled in favor of something safer and more marketable. The PG-13 rating was the killing blow. Joel Kinnaman, cast as Alex Murphy, said in one of his first post-casting interviews that obviously the film would be R-rated, because anything else would be idiotic for a RoboCop movie. He woke up the next morning to 47 missed calls from the studio. The film was rated PG-13. This matters more than it might sound. The original's extreme violence isn't an aesthetic choice, it's the mechanism through which the satire works. Murphy's transformation needed to be horrifying because the audience needed to feel what Omnicorp did to him. Stripping that out didn't just soften the movie, it removed the engine. The remake also let Murphy keep too much of himself. He remembers his family, he feels things, he pushes back from the start. This sounds more humane, but it guts the story. The tragedy of the original is watching a man's identity get ground down by a corporation that sees him as a product. If Murphy never really loses himself, then his struggle to reclaim his humanity has no stakes. You can't search for something that was never taken. The cast, Gary Oldman, Michael Keaton, Samuel L. Jackson, were all doing good work in a film that couldn't support it. Jackson's media satirist character, in particular, felt like fragments of the sharper movie Padilha had wanted to make, scattered across the safer one the studio approved. 49% on Rotten Tomatoes, box office that disappointed relative to budget and franchise expectations. The planned franchise was quietly dropped. Kinnaman later admitted the film needed to pay more attention to what fans wanted, an oddly candid thing to say, and kind of a sad one. The most complete example on this list of a studio taking everything that made something beloved and sanding it smooth until nothing remained. 10 films, hundreds of millions of dollars. The same mistake made over and over again. The originals had ideas, the remakes had a marketing strategy, and no amount of budget fixes that. So, which one on this list actually hurt you the most? And which film are you terrified Hollywood is going to get their hands on next? Drop it in the comments. If this one got you, subscribe. We do this kind of deep dive every week, and trust me, we're just getting